Tracy Sable tonight on EWTN News Nightly. Abortion ruling. The Supreme Court weighs in on a widely used abortion drug. We have reaction. Clarifying his remarks. What an Italian archbishop is saying about assisted suicide. High-stakes mission. U.S. diplomats have begun to vacate Sudan's capital as the violence increases. And no holding back. Pope Francis assures the faithful that we can tell Jesus anything. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, the Pontifical Academy for Life responds to outrage over comments credited to its president regarding assisted suicide. The Vatican organization says Archbishop Vincenzo Paglia remains strongly against life-ending procedures in line with church teaching. Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Rome Bureau Chief, has a report.
Has the Vatican changed its stance on euthanasia? Italian and then also international media outlets pose these questions to their audiences in the wake of comments made last week by Archbishop Vincenzo Paglia. He's the president of the Pontifical Academy for Life while speaking to Italian journalists in Perugia. He spoke about a specific ruling on assisted suicide by the Italian Constitutional Court handed down back in 2019. Quoting the court's strict conditions, he said legalized medically assisted suicide could be feasible, despite the clear teachings of the Catholic Church against it. Now, understandably, this has made headlines internationally as the Catechism of the Catholic Church calls euthanasia murder, gravely contrary to the dignity of the human person. Pope Francis has also forcefully condemned assisted suicide, saying we must accompany death, not provoke death or help any kind of suicide. Today, in a private meeting, Archbishop Paglia confirmed to me his personal opposition to euthanasia and made clear that the Academy for Life and the Church have always and will always advocate for the right to life from conception to natural death. And later today, the Academy also issued a clarifying statement reiterating Archbishop Paglia's no towards euthanasia and assisted suicide, in full adherence with the magisterium, also stating that he was speaking of a possible legal mediation under the very specific conditions in which the crime of assisted suicide could be decriminalized only here in Italy. Archbishop Paglia also addressed the necessity to promote palliative care and the need for accompaniment towards the sick in the end phase of life, so that no one is left alone in the face of illness and suffering. In Rome, Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN News Nightly.
When Washington, for now, the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing access to the FDA-approved abortion drug mifepristone stand in states where abortions are legal. So, what is next for the abortion drug used in a majority of abortions in the United States? Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now in the studio to tell us what's ahead. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tracy. After the justices handed down the decision on Friday, reaction among lawmakers was mostly along party lines. Republicans are confident that the U.S. Supreme Court ruling is only a temporary setback in their effort to protect the lives of the unborn. But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats are prepared to fight against Republicans' efforts to outlaw abortion nationwide.
Make no mistake about it. The hard right anti-choice MAGA wing in this country will keep working and working and working to take away all women's rights. But we will fight it and fight it and fight it, and we will succeed.
For now, mifepristone remains available for women in states where abortion is legal as the turbulent battle over the abortion pill heads back to an appeals court. Had the decision been upheld, it would have restricted use of the abortion pill.
Yet it was 3 Trump-appointed judges that basically tried to put their beliefs over the American Medical Association and the doctors of this country. That's what this case is about.
Conservative justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito publicly dissented. Justice Alito writing he has, quote, legitimate doubts the Biden administration would obey an unfavorable order in the case, indicating he'd let the abortion restrictions go into effect. After the ruling, Catholic Senator Steve Daines tweeted, quote, this decision by SCOTUS is a setback in the fight for life, but I will continue working to protect babies and moms from the danger and tragedy of DIY abortion drugs. Senator Lindsey Graham says the decision is another step in Democrats' efforts for abortion on demand.
What the Democratic Party proposes on abortion is barbaric. Abortion up to the moment of birth, taxpayer funded, I think is barbaric. I welcome this debate.
Congressional Pro-Life Caucus Chair Congressman Chris Smith called the ruling outrageous. Tragically, the FDA has instead enabled the abortion industry to prey on women and girls during the most vulnerable moments of need and has gone so far as to classify pregnancy as an illness. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops called the ruling a tremendous disappointment, both for the unborn and to women. Quote, "It is wrong to allow the FDA's greatly diminished health and safety standards for mifepristone to remain in place. The FDA acted unlawfully when it first approved and later relaxed safety requirements for prescribing and dispensing the drug."
So what's next? Oral arguments over the merits of the Texas case are set to kick off on May 17th in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. A ruling is expected to come by the end of summer, and the case could ultimately be sent back to the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices will then have to decide if they will take up the case. Tracy?
All right. Thank you, Eric. Well, the Biden administration warns the violence is increasing in Sudan, saying it is more dangerous there now than it was just a day or two ago. U.S. Special Forces used helicopters to ferry 70 U.S. Embassy personnel out of the Sudanese capital of Khartoum earlier on Sunday. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Tonight, the White House says for Americans stuck in Khartoum, the smartest thing to do right now is to stay put. It's too dangerous to move around. In the meantime, the U.S. is urging both sides engaged in the conflict to abide by a ceasefire.
In Sudan, where fighting threatens to plunge the African country deeper into chaos, multiple countries, including the United States, move in to get people out. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke today at the State Department.
On Saturday, I directed the temporary suspension of operations at Embassy Khartoum, and we conducted a successful operation to safely evacuate all U.S. Embassy personnel and their dependents.
The White House says it's trying to help guide Americans out, for instance, via land convoys, but emphasizes the situation is not conducive to try to conduct a larger military evacuation of American citizens.
So the best advice we can give to those Americans who did not abide by our warnings to leave Sudan and not to travel to Sudan is to stay sheltered in place, stay safe and secure and off the streets of Khartoum.
Also today in the press briefing room, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan tells reporters,
I want to stress that we have only temporarily suspended operations at the U.S. Embassy in Sudan. We fully intend to resume those operations as soon as it is safe to do so.
Meanwhile, as President Joe Biden honors the nation's top teachers in the Rose Garden.
Still reminds me all the time that teaching is not just what you do, it's who you are.
It looks like it's a go for President Biden running in 2024. Expect to see a video very soon making it official. Reports say he already picked White House advisor Julie Chavez Rodriguez to serve as his campaign manager.
Now back to Sudan for a moment. Tonight, the White House is pushing back on the notion that there are 16,000 Americans in Sudan that want to get out. In fact, officials believe the vast majority of American citizens in Sudan, who are not all in Khartoum, by the way, are actually dual nationals who do not want to leave that country. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, as mentioned earlier, President Joe Biden is expected to make it official tomorrow, announcing a re-election bid for 2024. But how are his poll numbers heading into the race, and why the announcement now? We go now to Tom Bevin, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, great to be with you. First off, your thoughts on President Biden's expected announcement tomorrow, and why do you think it's taken him so long to formally announce his re-election bid?
Well, I don't have any particular insight into why Biden has taken as long as he has, other than to say, he's been sort of stringing this along. And, he said he was going to do it after the State of the Union. That was 3 months ago. And there hasn't been a ton of organization and planning that's been taking place behind the scenes. I mean, we haven't seen any of the usual things that you would see for a candidate that is particularly an incumbent that's going to run for re-election. So we shall see. I mean, the thing for President Biden, his numbers are very soft. I mean, he is well liked by Democrats, but he is not well. They don't want him to run. They're not clamoring for him to run for office again. And so I think that's going to be an interesting part of the dynamic as we see this see his re-election bid take shape.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about the Republican side now. Former President Donald Trump really seems to be leading the pack now. Tom, do you think that we could be looking at another Trump-Biden matchup in 2024?
We could. I mean, it's a real possibility. Again, there's a long way to go before the actual voting takes place and before we really have a good understanding. All we have now are sort of snapshots in time of where the public, particularly the Republican voters, are where they stand, what they're feeling. And clearly, you know, Trump had been leading DeSantis by about 14 to 15 points consistently from the first part of the year. After the indictment came down, Trump's lead nearly doubled, and DeSantis had dropped pretty significantly. Now, whether that lasts throughout the entire summer and into the fall, as we lead up to and we start getting into the debates and whatnot, remains to be seen. But Donald Trump's still very, very popular within the Republican Party, the rank and file, even though there are members of the Republican Party who voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020 who are looking for an alternative. They aren't sure that he can win. They like his policies, but they might like to see somebody else carrying the torch for the Republican Party that has less sort of drama and baggage with them. So again, we'll see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, and on a different note, Hunter Biden's attorneys are set to meet with officials with the Justice Department this week. What more can you tell us about this, Tom?
Well, I mean, I think the most significant development in this case is the IRS whistleblower potentially coming forward and testifying. And from the reporting we've heard, testifying that a senior administration official reported to be Merrick Garland, Attorney General Merrick Garland, had lied before Congress about political interference in this case. I mean, there's been some additional reporting, and the House Oversight Committee has done work on getting bank records and trying to unspool, just how much, money was, influence peddling was going on in the Biden family. All of these things are ominous developments for Joe Biden's reelection bid. And certainly a whistleblower coming forward and testifying before Congress would be a huge, huge bombshell and really, I think, change the political landscape.
Tom, we're almost out of time, but quickly before I let you go, the White House announced today that Susan Rice is leaving her post as domestic policy advisor. What do you make of this, and also the timing?
Yeah, the timing's curious. I'm not sure what to make of it. I mean, Susan Rice has been a very, very trusted advisor. In fact, there were some rumors that she was being looked at potentially as a replacement for Kamala Harris on the ticket in 2024. Obviously, that's not going to happen. It looks like she's going. Obviously, these are tough jobs in the administration. They require a lot, and for people to stick around as long as they do, I mean, it tends to wear them down. So it could just be that. They're also reporting there could be that she was involved in some other things that might have precipitated her leaving the administration. So, but nevertheless, she's a significant influence within Biden's inner circle and has been a real key as far as his agenda is concerned thus far. And so, without her by his side, I think we'll see who ends up replacing her, but it's a significant move.
All right, Tom, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for coming on. I always appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Tracy.
A priest in Cuba says the Catholic Church is the only entity in a position to help the nation emerge from communism. His remarks come as the country addresses rising inflation and nearly 3/4 of the population living in poverty. Many citizens are calling for a transition from communist life. And in Mexico, thousands of people have signed a petition to speak out against an assisted suicide bill. Nearly 6,000 signatures were presented to lawmakers who are considering the measure. The group behind the signatures says euthanasia is a form of assisted death that has no place in a society that values life and human dignity. U.S. bishops are demanding that government officials address Nicaragua's persecution of Catholics. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops cited a spike in incidents targeting the faithful during Holy Week. The bishops say 15 Catholics were arrested during Holy Week, along with the long-term imprisonment of Bishop Jose Alvarez. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including fewer in the pews. We look at a recent study on Latin American Catholics in the U.S. And back to Hungary. We review the Holy Father's upcoming trip. A new study says that among US Hispanics, Catholicism is on the decline. According to findings by the Pew Research Center, Catholics remain the largest religious group among US Latinos, with 43% identifying as Catholic. However, that number is down from 67% in 2010. And the group of Hispanics who are religiously unaffiliated is now 30%. That is triple what it was back in 2010. And joining us now is Vicente Del Real, founder of Iskali, a Catholic group serving young Latinos in the United States. Sir, so great to be with you. Thank you so much. First off, your reaction to the study by Pew. Are you at all surprised?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I don't think I'm surprised. I think it's what we are able to see and the young people that we work with every day. You know, it's every day. I think there's many factors that are affecting young adults and how they connect to faith, to church, and yeah, I wish I would say that I'm surprised by the research, but I'm not surprised.
Vicente, why do you think so many Latinos are turning away from Catholicism? What's behind all of this?
Well, if I don't think I have a specific answer. I think it's many internal and external factors. I think when we talk about internal factors, I think we as a church need to do a better job outreaching to young Latinos, embracing them as members of the church, letting them know that they are important and that the church is a place where they belong. I think a lot of young Latinos feel that the church was for the parents and they no longer need to practice the faith of the parents. I think we need to do more intentional outreach especially for US-born Latinos, which is now the majority of young Latinos are US-born. And I think we need to improve that. When it comes to external factors, I think culture in general doesn't embrace Christian values as used to. And I think the combination of external and internal factors gives us that results. But I think we need to do better. We need to be intentional in sharing the good news with young Latinos. And we need to find ways to invest in programs that outreach to young Latinos. And also, maybe ask ourselves how the parish ministries are paying attention to the realities of young Latinos.
Yeah, and Vicente, can you tell us now about your organization? What sort of work you do, especially to engage young Latinos in their faith?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So first of all, we know that a lot of young Latinos, the little of faith and formation that they have received, they got it from their parents, their grandparents. We do know that immigrants that come to the U.S., most of them are practicing Catholics. However, many times they see that faith as irrelevant. They see the faith as, oh, this is something my parents had to do. This is no longer something that is relevant to my life. So the first thing we do is we try to share, the good news. We want them to have a personal encounter with Jesus, so they see that the faith of their parents, the faith of their grandparents, also has a message for them that is also relevant for their lives. That that Our Lady of Guadalupe loves them as much as Our Lady of Guadalupe loves their grandmas. In a sense, how do we connect sometimes this faith that they receive culturally as part of the Hispanic culture to now something that has personal relevance in their own life? And so we evangelize young Latinos with understanding their context. And we do also basic faith formation, right? How is the Catholic faith relevant and important for young people today as a moral compass? But most of it, we want young Latinos to have a personal encounter with Jesus.
Vicente, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us about all this. We really appreciate it. God bless you.
God bless you too. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Colorado says that it will hold off on enforcing its ban on treatments that can reverse a medication abortion. The move is in response to a lawsuit from a Catholic clinic. State officials say that they have entered a process to determine if such treatments should be allowed. The National Prayer Luncheon for Life has announced the winner of its biggest prize, saying the Abortion Survivors Network is the 2023 Pro-Life Impact Award winner.
The reality is we are all in this movement together. And that's really what my tears are about today.
Melissa Oden, the founder and CEO of the Abortion Survivors Network, accepted the award. It includes a $50,000 grant. Founded in 2019, the Abortion Survivors Network is the only worldwide organization for babies who have survived abortion and their families. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, back to Budapest. We get ready for the Holy Father's trip this weekend. Plus, out in the open, Pope Francis reminds us how we can deepen our relationship with our Heavenly Father. Pope Francis will be traveling to Hungary later this week, marking his second visit to the Central European country. The faithful are already preparing for the apostolic trip. Reporter Domonkos Pulay with EWTN Hungary has more.
When I met with Pope Francis in November, middle of November, he simply said to me, "I like Hungarians."
Following the footsteps of his Polish predecessor, St. John Paul II, Pope Francis is set to make an apostolic visit to Budapest from April 28th to the 30th. Archbishop Michael Wallace-Benech, Apostolic Nuncio to Hungary, is among one of those in charge of organizing the Holy Father's trip to the Central European nation.
Pope John Paul II visited Hungary 2 times, and Pope Francis will now visit Hungary 2 times.
Hungary is the only country apart from Italy to be visited by Pope Francis twice. In September 2021, the Pontiff made a short trip to Budapest to celebrate the closing Mass of the 52nd International Eucharistic Congress. It was then that he promised to the Hungarian people that he will return to the country once again.
I think it's a recognition of Hungary. A recognition of Hungary's place in the international community, and a recognition of what Hungary has to offer in the 21st century.
As it was in the beginning, is now.
Perhaps he sees us as those who stand by the values of Christianity and the gospel, even at the cost of sacrifices. Bishop András Veres, president of the Hungarian Catholic Bishops' Conference, says, "The Holy Father's statements resonate with the views of many Hungarians, even with non-Catholics, and refer to the Pontiff as a moral reference point for today's world." What we have experienced so far is that wherever the Holy Father appeared among young people, he was able to address them very effectively and make them enthusiastic.
Event, as you can tell probably from the public, at the Eucharistic Congress, and I really hope that they will have an encounter with Jesus tonight.
It seems to me that under the pontificate of Pope Francis, young people play a particularly important role, says Catholic University student Balázs Endrédi, adding that he hopes a meeting with the Holy Father will be a strengthening experience for the Hungarian Catholic youth. I found the motto chosen for the visit of the Holy Father exciting, because in many cases we see that the future seems very uncertain, very unpredictable, or in various European trends. It seems that more and more people are turning away from Christianity, from the Catholic Church, and in this context, the motto, "Christ is our future," can be very relevant. Pope Francis's visit will not only further strengthen the 1,000-year-old relations between the Holy See and Hungary, but will also serve as a powerful testimony that Christianity, which has existed for more than 2,000 years in Europe, can be passed on to future generations. In Budapest, Hungary, Domonkos Pulay, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Francis reminds the faithful that we can tell Jesus anything.
Tutti voi chiedo di accompagnarmi con la preghiera in questo viaggio.
At a Sunday address to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says that we can end every day with an examination of how things went and invite Jesus into both the struggles and the joys of daily life. Pope Francis adds the exercise does not need to take long, but Jesus loves when we bring him our friends, co-workers, fears, failings, and hopes. We thank you for watching tonight. And remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.